In the past 2 years, I have made 6 Musselburgh hats, which might go down in history as the most multiples of a pattern that I've ever made, except for socks. Today, I'm gonna share with you what makes this pattern just so amazing and versatile. And of course, I'll share all the details about these 6 hats. Before we begin, I want to say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for growing your business online. Squarespace makes it super easy to create a beautiful website, sell digital or physical products, and share your creative content with your audience. I'll be sharing more about how I use Squarespace for Love and Stitches later on in the video, but for now, let's get this Musselburgh party started. So let's just start with some basics. This is the Musselburgh pattern by Isolde Teague. It is a really cool hat that is a double layer that you knit in this wild sort of oblong shape and then fold it up inside to make it double layered and really, really warm. There are so many options when it comes to this hat. Within the pattern itself, it has 9 gauges and 5 different sizes from baby to adult XL, which just makes it a huge bang for your buck as far as patterns go. But then you can also customize it. So you can make it like this one where it's just a slouchy hat. You can make it with a fold-up brim. Those options are both in the pattern. And then as I'm gonna show you today, there are endless options for all sorts of fun things you can do with texture and color to make this pattern really one of a kind. There are multiple reasons why I have loved knitting this pattern so much and why I have made 6 of them over the last 2 years. I really had a lot of fun today going back through my project pages. I tried to kind of beef them up a little bit and have a few more details so I can really share a lot of things with you today. But there's gotta be a reason why I want to keep returning to this pattern and why hundreds of knitters all over are continuing to make this pattern again and again. So I just wrote down a few things that make me want to keep going back to it. So the first is just the versatility of the pattern. So the gauges, there are 9 different gauges and they range from 9 stitches per inch, which is a light fingering weight, to 5 stitches per inch, so you could do DK or worsted. You'll see that all of my hats today are going to be fingering weight, but that doesn't mean that that's the only option that is available. The knitability of this pattern too is just such a comfort. So you start out by making one of the crowns and you measure your gauge after you have an inch or so of knitting. I think that just makes it something that's really easy to get started on because you don't have to gauge swatch before, and it adds to like the knitability of the pattern. But once you get the crown all done, you have inches and inches, depending on how long you're making it, of stockinette, which means that this project is so great for out and about knitting, for while you're knitting on meetings, for while you're knitting and talking, knitting and watching TV, knitting in the dark, knitting at the movies. It is just the best project because I feel like sometimes with socks, I run out of stockinette tubing if I am away for a long time. And if I have a freshly started Musselburgh hat with just the crown, I know that I'm going to have many days worth of stockinette knitting to go. Something else I like about it is that it's a great way to use up a full skein of sock yarn. We all have single skeins of sock yarn just lying around that we don't know what to do with, but we don't really want to make a sock. And these hats can use up almost all of a 100-gram skein. Depending on the size that you make, you might have no issues at all using up 100 grams. But for me, in the sizes that I'm making, somewhere around an adult medium, as long as I make it a like slightly slouchy fold-up brim, I can pretty much use to within 2 grams that I leave intentionally, so I have a little bit of insurance, of an entire skein of yarn. So I love that I can use up something maybe that's a special skein that I really don't want to put into socks, or that's maybe a fiber content that's not great for socks, and really have something that is so usable and so wearable. The last thing I'm gonna say, and then we will get on to viewing all of the hats, is that this hat is functional as heck. It is actually warm. I didn't even know that I needed that until I moved from Texas to New York 2 years ago, and that may explain why within the 2 years that we've lived here, I have made myself more and more of this hat. It is the only knitted hat I have that keeps me warm, and I've actually started kind of letting go of my other knitted hats because they just don't do the job. With it being double layered, and then if you make a brim, you get 4 layers here on the ears. It actually has kept me warm for the entire New York City winter. I cannot say enough good things about these hats, but let's get on to going through each of my projects and I'll tell you which ones are my favorite. I've got a really lovely stack of hats here to share with you today, and I'm going to share them chronologically so you can kind of see the development over time of how I've tweaked this pattern to make it work best for me. But I'm going to share some tips too so that you can just like dive in right away if you're ready to make your first Musselburgh hat and have all the information you need to make it like customized best for you. So just as a brief overview, all of these hats are knit out of fingering weight yarn. Every single one of them, I use a US 2 needle, which is 2.75 millimeters. And the way that I knit my hats is I start at the crown with a 32-inch circular needle, again, size 2, and I do magic loop for the entire crown. You start at the very top and you increase out. Once I have all of my stitches, I then switch over to 16-inch size 2 needles. So I just do that first row where I'm not increasing and I just knit onto that 16-inch needle. And I do that for the entire middle body of the hat. Then when it's time to go back the other way and work the other crown and do decreases, I'll do the first, I don't know, maybe 8 to 12 rows on the 16-inch circular. Once it starts to get a little too small, I have too few stitches to keep going, I then switch back to my 32-inch and do magic loop to finish out the hat. Something that I know is like a thorn in everyone's side is how to start these hats. I like to use the crochet pinhole cast on. I learned how to do it from Very Pink Knits, so I'll link that tutorial down below, but I'm also planning to create my own tutorial here very soon, so be looking out for that in a couple of weeks. I'm going to show you how I take the crochet pinhole cast on and then how I actually transfer it to knitting needles so that I can work the first row of the Musselburgh hat. I know that can be the trickiest part about getting started on these, so I hope to have that resource for you very, very soon. Let's start with my very first Musselburgh hat. I finished this one in April of 2021, and this is Long Dog yarn in the colorway Lady Amalthea, and I'll have all the project pages for these hats linked down below. So this hat is very simple. It is not, it's slouchy, but it doesn't have a fold-up brim or anything. And I have, hold on, I've got my notes here, 14.25 inches between the crowns. So that means once I stopped increasing, the amount that I knit straight without changing my stitch count was 14.25 inches. And all of those notes are in my project pages too, but I'm going to be sharing that measuring point for all the hats that I'm going to show you today because that's an important one, I think, to know. This size is an adult medium at 7 stitches per inch. But here's the thing. I think I must have thought that when I measured at first, like as I just did the crown, that my gauge was 7 stitches per inch. And the original pattern only went down to 7 stitches per inch. Now the updated pattern has 7.5 stitches per inch, 8 stitches per inch, 8.5 stitches per inch, 9 stitches per inch, which is amazing. But at the time when I started this a few years ago, that wasn't an option in the pattern. So I just basically went with the smallest gauge that there was. And so even though I followed adult medium at 7 stitches per inch, this came out more like an adult small. It definitely felt really tight when I first started wearing it. Now it really feels quite good. So after I knit this first hat, I didn't knit another Musselburgh for a year, I think, maybe a little bit more than a year. But once I realized just how warm it was, I set out on a mission to make my next hat and use up as much yarn as I possibly could. Here is my second Musselburgh hat that I finished in September of 2022. See what my hair is doing here. This is yarn from Circus Tonic Handmade in the colorway You Are Mighty, which was a special colorway from Do You Knit, and I wanted to use up as much of the yarn as possible. So that was kind of my whole parameter for this hat. I thought I will weigh my yarn, I'll see how much I have. Once I reach about half of my yarn, I wanted to leave myself a few grams extra just in case. Then I would mark that as the halfway point and then basically mirror that, knit the rest of it. And that's how I ended up with this hat. So this hat is also slightly slouchy, and it has a really nice fold up brim. I did make this hat a little bit bigger. So once I realized in my first hat that my gauge was really looking like 8 stitches per inch, I then set out to kind of make myself an in-between size, because the adult medium was a little too big, but the adult small was a little too small. I'm pretty sure my head measures like 21 or 22 inches. I probably should have measured that. But basically, I made myself an in-between size, which has been my go-to since then. I added one more increase round from the previous hat that I did, and that gave me 136 total stitches. So that is my stitch count now. For all the hats that I make for me is 136 total stitches. As I kind of learned how to make these hats, I found out which size you can follow to do 136 stitches, so I'll share that in a second too. This hat is 19 inches long between crowns. So after the increases and before the decreases, it's 19 inches. And I think it gives me a really good amount of fold up. And I like having a little bit of slouch because I have a pretty small head and I'm not a small person. So it kind of helps balance me out, I think. I really love this one. Actually, this is one of my favorites. I love how it turned out. And I ended up with only, I think, 4 grams of yarn left out of my 100 gram skein, which is just perfect because I don't like having too many leftovers or having to figure out what to do with my leftover yarn. This Musselburgh hat is really what got my wheels turning and kicked off a whole spree of making Musselburgh hats, not just for me, but for other members of the family. And that's what we have coming up next. Something that's really fun that you can do with these hats is you can stack them like this, kind of like an ice cream cone. I think they look really, really fun and, I don't know, attractive. Just kidding, obviously. Now that I have your attention, I would love to tell you a little bit more about today's sponsor, Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for the past couple of months to help rebuild my website. I just feel like it's important to have a really strong website when you're a small business so that you have one place to tell people to go where they can access all of the different things that you have to offer. Lately, I've been using Squarespace to help me build a web page for my upcoming event called Sock Week. I have all of these different links and photos and all kinds of things that I need to get into one space and be really, really clear about what I'm trying to communicate. And Squarespace makes it super easy to do that. I've used other web builders in the past, and I feel like Squarespace is the most user-friendly. I love that everything is gridded and I can just kind of slide things around in a really intuitive way. I like that I don't have to fight with code and I can just use the knowledge that I already have about visiting websites in general. Squarespace is so much more than just building a website. If you're a dyer or a bag maker or a designer, you can set up your online store within Squarespace in just minutes. If you're like me and you kind of just need a place that's a one-stop shop that can then link to your YouTube channel and your Etsy shop and your Instagram and all the different things that you already have, Squarespace makes that super easy to do with their domains. Squarespace domains have no hidden fees or price spikes. You can easily set up a website domain that ends in .com, .org, .net, or even create a custom one like .art. Or maybe you create exclusive content to sell. With Squarespace, you can set up member areas for gated content like videos, courses, or even newsletters. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready, you can head to squarespace.com/nittynatty to get 10% off your first domain or website. Toaster and I both have our silly hats ready to go, so let's head back to the video. So these two do go hand in hand. I was working on them at the same time. This one I finished in November of 2022, this one in December of 2022. They use the same yarn, they're slightly different. This one is for Kent and this one is for me. So let's actually start with this one. So the yarn that I used is Rain's Obsessive Stitchery. She's a dyer out of Tennessee, and she custom dyed this colorway for me to look like the Dallas Stars colorway, or colors. There's two colorways actually. One is called Victory Park and one is called The Hanger. I don't remember which one is which. The fun thing about this hat, this one is for Kent, it is a fitted hat. So it's not meant to slouch. It's a little bit big on me. I think I knit the adult medium at 8 stitches per inch for this one for Kent's head, and his head is quite a bit bigger than mine, and it fits him really, really well. It just comes over his ears, so I was kind of playing this game of like use as much of this yarn as possible, but also be able to knit two hats out of it. So I didn't have as much yarn as I wanted to have, but Kent didn't want it to fold up. He didn't want it to slouch, so he just needed this bit. The cool thing about this hat is it's knit in two colors, but it's also knit in two patterns. So this is the first time that I tried a 1x1 rib for the hat. So I did the rib on the first half of the hat and kind of just worked out what I needed to do to start the ribbing. Like, I can't remember exactly what row I started it on, but I followed the pattern, just did ribbing instead of stockinette. Halfway through, I did a purl ridge just to help things fold. And then I switched to the other yarn and switched to stockinette. But I did run into trouble here. Some of you may remember last year, it might have been on this hat, but with variegated yarn, sometimes it just pulls in a way that is maybe not attractive to some. It wasn't attractive to me. So what I ended up doing is this half is actually knit helically. So instead of just one ball of yarn, I split the yarn in two, and I had two balls of yarn going with helical knitting, and it turned out like this, which is really, really cool. So I think this one came out really fun. So this one's an adult medium, like I said, for Kent. There is 12 inches between the crowns. This is my shortest by far. Remember, no slouch, no folding up. So there is 6 inches of stockinette and 6 inches of ribbing and that purl ridge in between. I think Kent likes to wear it, actually I think he likes this side the most. So he usually wears it like this, which is great. You can just see like a little peek of the other color underneath. Now for my hat, I knew I wanted a little more length. I wanted slouch and I wanted it to roll up, but because I wasn't sure about my yarn, I actually ended up knitting a smaller size than my other hats that fit me a little better, just because I wanted to eke out as much yarn as possible. So this one, same yarn, is an adult small at 8 stitches per inch. It still fits me. It's just a bit snugger, which is fine. It still actually fits totally fine. It just feels a little different than my other hats that are like in between size. Basically, I think there's an 8 stitch difference, which is about an inch. Yeah, exactly an inch if I'm getting 8 stitches per inch. So this one is also 2 colors, but the interesting thing about this one is I thought, well, what if I did part of it, like 3/4 of it in ribbing, so that the ribbing would fold up on either side, and then just one part of it in stockinette. I started getting really creative with these. So this one is, I guess about, I don't know if that's really 3/4, but 2/3 maybe ribbing. So rib here, rib in the middle, and then this side is stockinette. I also did helical knitting here, but what's wild is the pooling is completely different. So just to, I guess that was 8 or 16 stitches difference. I'm not really sure actually. I don't know how many stitches different this is, but it made a huge difference in how things pulled. It's actually pretty wild. Looks pretty cool up there. I was definitely disappointed when this one came out like this because I really wanted it to look like this, but no matter, it still came out really cool and I'm happy with it now. Okay, so this one is 17.5 inches between the crowns. I think that was similar to my other one. No, I guess I haven't had another one like this before. So this one's kind of in between. Like the one for me, I'm getting lost now. The one for me that doesn't fold up was 14.25 inches. This one has like just enough to fold up. It's 17.5. And then this one was the 19 inches. And actually you're gonna see as we move into these last two hats, that 19 inches between the crowns is what I found is my favorite. But for this one, let me make sure I tell you correctly, I had 5.5 inches in the solid colored rib. Then I had 6.5 inches here, which basically this middle part becomes the brim on either side. And then I had 5.5 inches of stockinette here on this side. So what's fun about this hat is it's two different hats because of the colors, but it's also two different hats because of the texture. I haven't worn this one a lot just because the colors are specifically for the Dallas Stars and we haven't gone to a lot of games since I finished this. I don't even know if we've gone to any. But so one side has a stockinette brim, and see, it really doesn't, if I want it to have slouch, I have to kind of make the brim pretty small. So I learned that 17.5 inches is not quite enough for me, but I can just get it to fold up and then stockinette here on this side. And then if I flip it, I have a solid green rib. I like it to have a little slouch. I guess it really doesn't have much slouch. Maybe this is more fitted. I don't know. And then this color rib. So this hat, I'm like, still, it's not my favorite. I'm not the most happy with how it came out, but I am excited that Kent and I have almost matching hats that we can wear together. That brings us to Musselburgh hat number 5. I wanted to give ribbing another try with more yarn. I felt like I just didn't get the success story that I wanted with that last hat, but I really did like trying out the ribbing. So this time I decided to go kind of a combo of taking the hat that I really liked the length of with the ribbing, like 3/4 ribbing or 2/3 ribbing that I did on the previous one. So that is what this hat is. This one I finished in February of 2023. It is Suburban Stitcher Reunited, and because I had info from my past hats, I knew how long I could go in between the crowns. So this one has 19 inches between crowns. That way it is slouchy and folds up, but just like the other, oh, and it's the right size for me now. See how this one fits a little bit better? The other one that's a size small, like just barely fits, but the in-between small and medium is what really works for me. So again, this one's 136 stitches. And this is when I learned that the pattern had updated. And so if you want to follow the pattern and have 8 stitches per inch and you want an in-between size, you can follow the adult medium at 7.5 stitches per inch. I think I mentioned that before, but that's kind of when I like realized that. So this hat is better. It's got just a little bit of slouch. It's got the ribbing and the ribbing, and then you can flip it. And on this side, which I think I like a little bit more, is stockinette and ribbing. But it's kind of fun, right? Because it has two different things going on. So when you look at this hat pulled out, we can look at the different section length. So actually I started with the rib because that's what I knew how to do. So for this hat, 19 inches between the crowns, it's got, wait, I'm looking at the right one. I didn't write it this way. Oh, no, wait, this way first. Sorry, I'm getting confused. All of the notes and details are in my project pages too. But it's got 15 inches. That can't be right. It says 15 inches of rib. I think it meant to say 14. I'm pretty sure it's 14. Let's say 14 inches of rib and 5 inches of stockinette all between the 2 crowns so that you have 2 different hats. I really like how this one came out. This one quickly moved into my favorites spot, although I did notice that I preferred the end or the side that had the stockinette a little more than the ribbing, like so. But it feels really comfortable and fits really, really good. I kind of like having like just the ribbing, like it's so cozy on your ears. So about the time that I was ready to start my final Musselburgh hat, a friend in the Love and Stitches membership mentioned that she had recently knit a Musselburgh where she wanted a rib brim, but she didn't need either crown, one of the crowns to be rib, so she just did rib in the middle. And that brings us to our last hat. This one I finished in April of 2023. The yarn is from the Little Wolf Knits and it is called Love in Speckles, which is a special colorway that Brianna dyed just for the Love and Stitches members earlier in 2023. And this is where I feel like I've hit my stride on kind of like a favorite. I really, really do like this one, but the knitability of not having to do rib all the way through and just having it here in the center makes this hat one of the easiest ones to knit. So let's talk about this one. Again, I have found that the best size for me is 136 stitches in between small and medium, 8 stitches per inch. Worked out really, really well. This one has 19 inches between the crowns, and I believe it has 5.5, let me see. No, I'm sorry, 6.5 inches of stockinette. I should have left it like this. 6.5 inches of stockinette, 6 inches of rib here in the middle, 6.5 inches of stockinette on the other side, which is 19 in total. So it gives you 2 identical hats. It's not like as exciting because it's not different on the 2 sides, but it does make a really nice hat. What's nice about this one too is that if you do want the ribbing look, you get that ribbed brim, but you don't have to knit as much ribbing, only 6 inches. And if you have a sensitivity where you like only smooth knit stitches to be on your ears, this one is stockinette against your ears because the 6 inches of rib are getting folded up inside like that. So this one turned out really, really nice. I mean, I just finished this one. I really haven't gotten to wear it as much because the weather has been turning warmer, but I would say that this is another one of my favorites. I just wanted to end by sharing a couple of other fun ideas that I've seen out there in the Instagram world and give you some other things you can do with your Musselburgh hats and hopefully share some tips that will help you with success. So when you're following the pattern, you're going to make sure to check your head measurement, and then you can pretty much just find which size is going to fit you, but don't be afraid to try an in-between size. With hats, you do not want to make them the same size as your head. You want them to be smaller than your head. My hats that are fitting me the best are about 17 inches around. And like I said, I think my head is 21 or 22 inches. So that's 4 or 5 inches smaller. The hat is 4 or 5 inches smaller than my actual head. You definitely want to have a little bit of negative ease. And I mean, you even saw with this one that's really small. I think this one's a 16 inches around. It still works, but it depends on what your preferences are. Do you want something that is a little firmer and squeezes a little tighter, or do you want it to be a little bit looser? Do you have a lot of hair that you want to keep piled up under your hat? All of these are things to consider when picking your size, and you'll kind of know as you make the Musselburgh hats. I'm hoping you get addicted to them too, and you love making them and you make yourself several versions, what is going to work best for you. Something really fun I've seen that I want to try soon, not on my next Musselburgh because yes, I already have plans for another one, but I saw this on, I think it was Huga Canyon's page. They did 2 sock sets. They had a 50-gram sock set that came with a 20-gram mini, and then a separate 50-gram sock set that came with the 20-gram mini. And so they had 4 colors throughout their hat. So let me see if I can explain this well. So it was like this. It was all stockinette with a fold-up brim. They had the 50 gram from like here to here, and then like 3 inches in the 20 gram mini. And then on the other side, same thing, like it was 3 inches on the 20 gram mini and then 50 grams of the main color. I know this is a little hard to visualize, but what I wanted to get to here is that if you choose to do different colors at any point, keep in mind that the order that you're knitting might not be the way that it is worn. So if I were to take, let's just go with pink here, and then let's say I did a blue right here, the blue brim that's next to the pink knitting is not what's actually going to end up. It's whatever part I knit next that gets folded up. So if I wanted to pair, let's say like purple and pink together, and then on the other side I wanted to do like blue and red, I would do purple, red, and then, wait, now I've got my colors confused. Whatever colors I want to go together, they need to not be touching each other. So I would have whatever color here, and then the color that I wanted to go with it would be next. And then whatever color I wanted to go with the other side, I would knit here. I hope that's making sense, but try to visualize it. Look at other people's Musselburgh projects. There is really no limit to what you can do. One last tip, and this came to me from Casey, who took the time to send me a really nice email about how she likes to knit Musselburgh hats. And it was kind of a tip on how to use up as much yarn as possible. So something that you can do, I have not tried this yet, but it's really smart. Instead of starting at the top as the pattern indicates and knitting a crown, you could actually just start here with your total cast on and a provisional cast on. A provisional cast on is one that is done with waste yarn and can come out later, and you can knit from it. So Casey said the way that she likes to do the hats sometimes is cast on the total stitch count. So basically you'd be starting here, knit the whole thing, do 1 crown, still you'd have to weigh your yarn and make sure you have enough to work the second crown. But then she can come back over here and then pick up all the stitches and knit another decreased crown. So in this case, both crowns will match. In the original pattern, and the way I've done all of mine, which works great, is you do an increased crown and a decreased crown. But the way that Casey does it with the provisional is you can have 2 decreased crowns, which makes them match even more and can help you manage your yarn. And if you don't have enough of the color that you want to do your entire hat, but you don't care about flipping the hat ever to the other side, like the side on the inside will always be the side on the inside, you could just use up all of your yarn, and then you can come and do the crown with a completely different color because you're never going to see it. I absolutely love the Musselburgh hat pattern. I am never going to stop making them. I feel like right now I have a really exciting idea for my next one that I will be sharing soon in a podcast episode. If I haven't shared it already, I might have shared it already. I'm so excited. I feel like the sky's the limit, and I have endless ideas for how to make these different. And I almost feel like I'm never going to make one exactly the same. It's fun to always be trying something new and different. I will have a Musselburgh cast on tutorial coming very, very soon. Stay tuned. It will be here in a couple of weeks if you need some help getting started on your Musselburgh hat. I hope to be able to help you get started on those. If you're making a Musselburgh, please give credit to the designer, Isolde Teague, but I would also kind of like it if you tag me because I just like to see the interesting things that you are coming up with for these hats. That has been a pattern that I'm just growing to love so, so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!